Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to ask, do you like being defeated? So are you the sort of wargamer who likes being defeated? Well, of course, I doubt if anyone would say yes to that. But what I actually mean is, can you still find enjoyment in a battle lost as well as a battle won? I know plenty of people with hobbies who are frankly miserable when things don't work out how they planned. And of course, we're all capable of having an off day and letting defeat get the better of us. But for the most part, I would say that win, lose or draw, I take joy in my hobby. How else can I have my backside handed to me on a regular basis, see last week's video if you want some examples, and still come back for more, year after year, decade after decade? My wife often says that she has to ask me specifically when I come back from a game, did you win? Because when I come home from a game, she can hardly tell from the look on my face. Simply asking, did you have a good time, elicits a positive response all the time, despite my win to loss ratio being roughly even-ish. Now, a couple of years ago I did a video about wargaming etiquette. I'll put a link up here somewhere, one of these sides, I can never remember which side, in which I talked about playing with conviviality. And by that I meant recognising that for non-competitive play, our games are just that, just a game. Everyone should be there to have a good time, and anything to the contrary should be left at the front door. If you turn up for a game determined to crush your opponent because you've had a bad week at work or an argument with your wife, then you need to calm down, turn around and go home. Now, wargaming is of course a competitive activity, but that doesn't mean that it has to be adversarial. Now, I firmly believe that everyone taking part should play in a friendly and cheerful manner, and that starts with yourself. I think we all ought to go into our games recognising that we can't control everything, that sometimes victory and defeat are as much down to luck as well as skill. Now, in my view, spending time with your friends is just as important as winning that competition, that feat of arms. And of course, defeat and victory are opposite sides of the same coin, our amazing hobby. And when that coin is that amazing hobby that we embrace, that we love so much, why can't we just embrace defeat as positively as we do victory? And of course, if you're invested in the win, if you care about doing your best in the game, then inevitably defeat will sting, it will feel all the sharper. And in a personal test of skill, the wargamer will feel the weight of that failure all the more. It's inevitable, we're only human. But of course, today's talking point is not about letting that failure get the best of you, it's about turning the experience around and making it a success in other ways. So accepting the outcome, but enjoying the time spent with friends, playing with beautiful toy soldiers and maybe learning a little bit of history along the way, is a massive positive regardless of the outcome of the game. Another positive, if you like, if you are playing with friends, is to enjoy the jokes and the banter that take place around the table, regardless of the outcome. A brilliant example of this would be the game we played last weekend, where my strongest and abiding memory of the day was watching Ray nearly expire with laughter, because at one point I pointed to a pile of smoke tokens and asked to be handed some smuffs of poke. That silly spoonerism early on in the game became the running joke that permeated our banter for the whole day, and the subsequent defeat didn't feel quite as bad after that. Of course, a slightly less silly way to turn defeat into a positive is to take the experience to analyse the game, to identify what went wrong, so that I can learn from it. We do this, many gamers do this regularly on their blogs and on YouTube, and it's a positive experience. It turns a negative outcome into a positive learning experience, dulling the sharp edge of that failure. So as usual, I want to throw this one out to you and ask how you handle winning and losing in your hobby. Wargaming is of course a competitive pursuit, but is victory the be-all and end-all of gaming for you? If, like me, victory is never guaranteed, have you learned to love your hobby even when success seems to be elusive? So, time for a hobby update. Last weekend, as I mentioned earlier, the Rejects got together for a Franco-Prussian War game, the Battle of Froschweiler, 6th of August 1870. Richard hosted this game using the They Died for Glory rules. It's been a long time since our group has played with these rules, but Richard has promised to put on a couple more games this year, schedule permitting of course. Now, I'm currently putting together a quick flip-through review of the rules, including some pictures from the game as illustrations. I had hoped to have that ready for Friday, but I just haven't had enough time to get it finished, and I don't want to rush it, so I'm actually going to put it out next week. However, in the meantime, I have posted some teaser pictures from the game in the community tab on the channel. Now, Richard also did a really excellent battle report for the game on this blog, on his blog, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. Please go and read it, because I thought it was a really good summary of the day with some really excellent photos. Now, earlier in the week I posted a poll in the community tab asking subscribers to let me know what type of videos they enjoyed most on this channel. Now, I've made a couple of videos in the last few months where it took a lot of effort to put together, and I thought I had a really good video, but they actually really underperformed compared to my usual fare, and it got me thinking a lot more about what works and what doesn't work on this channel. Google Analytics, of course, gives you lots of information that lets you see if a video has performed well, but it doesn't hurt to ask the audience some simple questions to say, what is it that you actually prefer? Hence the poll. So if you haven't already completed the poll, please pop over to the community tab, check out the community page, as I say, on the channel, take part in the poll to shape the direction of the content that I'm going to be producing going forwards. So, Workbench update, there's probably, as usual, not a lot to say. The painting challenge is over and I didn't achieve my target. I didn't have a fixed project this year. I had a plan, but it was a very loose one. But I've also had frankly, a very tough start to the year at work, with multiple projects overlapping, increasing my workload. Getting some reading or planning done during a lunch break has become a rarity rather than the norm, and some days I get home from work and I'm just too tired to get anything much done. So although I do try to do something every evening, there are just some days when I haven't felt up to it, so I haven't really got as much painting done as I really would have liked. But I'm going to take this one on the chin. This is an unusual one for me. Every year I've gone into the painting challenge with a clear project, and I've already got an idea for what I want to paint for next year's painting challenge, or later this year's painting challenge, because it will start again in December. I'm going to have a think about it, plan it out properly, and I think if I've actually got something to complete, like a small army, it will encourage me to get on and get that painted. So we've got time for a book review, and this week I'm looking back at a book that I read some years ago, SPQR by Mary Beard. Now, few modern historians have the ability to communicate the complexity of their subject in layman's language without dumbing it down. Mary Beard, however, is no ordinary historian and has been defying convention and thumbing her nose at the academic world she inhabits, not altogether tongue-in-cheek, for several decades. Her story of Rome's earliest history is uniquely detailed, informative, funny, and often wryly observed, but never overly academic. Now, Polybius once said, "Who could be so indifferent or so idle that they did not want to find out how and under what kind of political organisation almost the whole of the inhabited world was conquered and fell under the sole power of the Romans in less than 53 years, something previously unparalleled." Who indeed, and many historians have tried to explain the early history of the rise of Rome with varying degrees of success. Rome's early history is devilishly difficult to uncover. Little survives from that time, and most of the classical sources were written hundreds of years after the founding of the city of Rome. Beard carefully lays out the many theories and what little evidence exists to present as clear a picture of this unclear time as it is probably possible to achieve. More importantly, she asks what I think are the right questions when looking back at this period. Were the seeds of future Roman success laid out in the city's foundation? And was the rise of Rome as a superpower inevitable? The task she sets herself in writing this book, reviewing such a vast swathe of history, is truly colossal. On the one hand, Rome's story is one of warfare, of battles won and lost, of enemies defeated and absorbed, and she tells that part of the story effortlessly. But to understand what drove Rome forward, one needs to understand Roman politics. The rise of Imperial Rome is presented as almost as an inevitable consequence of the way the Republic was formed and driven forward. From an early point, Romans were inclusive, outward looking, and had an unshakable belief in their right to exist. There was no grand plan for world conquest, but looking back through the prism of history, it's clear that either Rome would be destroyed or it would conquer. There was never really a third option for Rome. So of course you can't talk about Rome without talking about the Monty Python film The Life of Brian, where a group of plotting revolutionaries asks, what have the Romans ever done for us? And Mary Beard confidently and accurately asserts that the Romans are completely relevant to the modern world and to us, even if we don't at first always understand this. She says, for instance, since the Renaissance at least, many of our most fundamental assumptions about power, citizenship, responsibility, political violence, empire, luxury and beauty have been formed and tested in dialogue with the Romans and their writing. The world of Rome may seem long removed, but the centuries have not dimmed its influence on the way we think and our lives in the modern world. This book is an excellent analysis of what Roman really means to us and what it meant to the Romans themselves. It challenges many of our modern preconceptions by revealing not just a story of emperors and generals, but also of the ordinary people of the empire who, in typically Roman fashion, came from all corners of the known world. And crucially, the book tells the story of what she calls the project of citizenship. For centuries, citizenship was a valued status symbol, a tool of control and oppression, according to some, that the conquered, the poor, even slaves could one day aspire to, and therefore ensure their willing participation in the Roman system of governance. In 1212 CE, this project, which started with the foundation of Rome, reached its almost inevitable conclusion when Emperor Caracalla decreed that all free inhabitants of the empire, wherever they lived, were Roman citizens. Mary Beard eloquently argues that without the promise of citizenship status, the inevitable and slow decline of the Roman Empire had thus been set in motion. Now this is a long book. It's 606 pages and covers 1,000 years of history after all, but every page is a pleasure to read and will most certainly challenge how you view the Romans. No one historian, it has to be said, can tell everything, but in this book Mary Beard gets pretty close to the full picture. She gives it a really good shot, and so I give this book a very solid 5-star rating. So that's it for this week. As always, please join in the conversation in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course keep rolling on.